makeup done for the pictures. He was there with me when I got my pictures done. And a lot of people say, well, that's no big deal, but it was to me because, you know, those are things that usually, you know, you think of doing with your mother. And my mom, my mom's a good mother, you know, she's a very good mom. But she was working, and it just so happens that she was not available at that time when these things were going on, and my dad was just more than happy to be there for me in that way, and I'm ever so grateful for that. And I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. And I thought later on, I think, well, what better person is it to look at a gown and say if it looks good than a man, because I'm wearing it and I'm a woman, and you can tell what, you know, he thinks looks good on me. And I think we made a good pick. And then later on in life, I went into labor with my second child, but the first one, he was there too, you know, but I had a C-section. But with the second one, Millicent, my parents had just come into town from, they were staying at their summer home, and they decided to make a trip back up here. And when they did, I was in labor, and I didn't know it. I was just kind of in denial watching TV, and I had Michaela riding on my back. You know, she was 3 or 4, and she was on my back, and I said, Michaela, sit on my lower back. My parents came to visit me, and my mom said something doesn't look right, and so my dad ended up talking me into going to the hospital. And I went in there, and 45 minutes later, Millicent was born. But since everything went so quickly, my dad ended up in triage with me, and they thought that he was the dad. And the funny thing about it is my dad was like, you know, 30, maybe 36 years older than me. So it's kind of funny having a man that much older than me, and they think that he's my husband or my baby's daddy or something. And I kept calling him Daddy, but they didn't get the fact that I mean Daddy, like my daddy. And anyway, he was with me when I was being checked, and that was kind of, I'm like, Daddy, get out of here. But he couldn't leave because they were blocking him in. And then what happened was he ended up being in there when I gave birth to Millicent, and he was sitting in the corner, and his face was just as pale as a ghost. And he was like, he couldn't move because he had never been in the presence of a woman who had given birth, because, you know, back in the whenever I was born and all that, you know, the guys were still, the daddies were still in the waiting room, or just, you know, they weren't really in the room with the mothers anyway. And so they kept on telling him, oh, guess what, you have a girl. And he's like, a granddaughter. And they were like, huh? Well, I looked up, and by the time I looked up, there was my dad, my husband, and some doctor that came in that was wearing his golf clothes, because he was the one who was, you know, he wasn't expecting, he wasn't my doctor, he was, you know, on call, but my doctor was on vacation. And he came in with his golf clothes and everything, all looking grassy and stuff. And they were like, what's going on here? And I'm like, yeah, I would like to know what's going on. You know, my dad's sitting here, my husband's sitting here, I'm having it, this is really a very uncomfortable situation right now. But anyway, my dad was there for me when I gave birth to my second child, and, you know, at first I was really humiliated, the fact that he was in there and saw so much. But then later on I realized that, you know, that was a once-in-a-lifetime chance really for him, because how often is it that your daughter is going to say, Daddy, I want you to be in there with me when I have my child? How about that? And how many times is it that you're going to be in there with your son's wife or something and have, you know, so it's kind of one of those things that it ended up becoming a special moment for me. And throughout all the years, I can think about all these little things that went on that my dad was part of with me. And I just think to myself, I'm so thankful to have had my father. So many children do not have fathers, because either they're in prison, they're dead, or they're denying them. Or through divorce, excuse me. And I think to myself, I was once a little girl, and I know how much my father meant to me. And I urge men out there that are fathers, that do not have relationships with your daughters, you need to step up and do it. Because the little girl needs a father. You're the first man in her life. That leaves a lasting impression on what kind of person she will marry someday, the person that she will have children with someday. And if you are a jerk, she might end up getting with a jerk because that's all she knows. And I'm telling you straight up. I hate to get emotional about it, but I think about this all the time. I think about all the girls and guys and stuff growing up without fathers. Sometimes it's not their fault. Sometimes it's not anyone's fault. Things just happen. But take a little time out and think about how important you can be to your little girl. Just think about it. Thank you.